Yaakov and Esav stand in contrast to each other in so many ways. Yaakov is the honest person, the tam, the person of emes. Esav is the ish tzayid, the cunning person. Yaakov represents olam haba, spirituality. Esav olam hazeh, physicality. They're twins, but not identical twins. Almost opposite, inverses, the inverse of each other. There's another contrast, a very significant contrast, which is fundamental to our mindset, which connects to the other things, to truth and falsehood, to this world and the next, and is brought out in another aspect of the presentation of Yaakov and Esav. Esav came out kulo kader seir, completely covered in hair, and they called his name Esav, as Rashi says. Esav is from the term asui, done, finished. He was complete. He was covered with hair like a mature person. Later in the Parsha, we're taught that Yaakov was an ish chalak, was smooth, didn't have that hair. Here, where they're first introduced, a similar concept is expressed, not about hair. But his name was Yaakov because his hand held on to the heel of Esav. And as the Sforno explained, the idea is that the akev, the heel, represents the end. And Yaakov would be the one who would remain in the end. Yaakov's path is fraught. Life, his life story, his history, brings him difficulty during which he often does not prevail. But in the end, Yaakov will prevail. While other nations will experience destruction, you will not. You will prevail. And here we have a fundamental difference between Yaakov and Esav. Esav lives in the here and now. Esav needs to have it immediately, but it's not just the pursuit of instant gratification. All he sees is the present. The mindset of simplicity, of immaturity, lives for the here and now, sells the bechorah, the futures, with all that is going to be inherent in those futures, for the bowl of soup of the present. Michra chayom es bechoras chali. Sell me according to what I see today. Sell to me according to what I see today and present to you today your bechorah, which is the gift of the future. Yaakov, what distinguishes us as Bnei Yaakov, is the willingness to invest and to give up on immediate pleasures, to dedicate ourselves towards a more magnificent future. This is the idea which is expressed in all of the contrasts between Yaakov and Esav. Think about it. Yaakov is olam haba, Esav is olam hazeh. Is that just the difference between the material and the spiritual? Or Esav lives for the olam hazeh, for the present, and Yaakov Avinu has a long view. We're going to work here in this world. We're going to invest for the eventuality of the olam haba. And Yaakov Avinu is a person who's tam, who's a person of emes, of truth. You know what the Gemara says, how the Gemara points out that there's a word for emes and a word for sheker, and emes meracha kan mile. Emes has the first letter of the aleph beis, the middle letter of the aleph beis, the final letter of the aleph beis. Emes is a long, protracted process. Consistency, starting from the beginning to the middle to the end. That dedication, that long-term goal, whereas sheker comes from 3 consecutive letters, kuf, resh, shin. Sheker is the instant, the pursuit of the instant, what we call sometimes the instant gratification. But every bit of falsehood can always be true for an instant, for a bit. If you're thinking for the present and only for the present, so then that's one thing. Yaakov Avinu thinks for the future. He's a work in progress. Life is about development, about changing, about transforming. We know that one of the contrasts, of course, is that Yaakov Avinu is the bris. Yaakov Avinu is the person of the bris, and Esav is referred to as someone who was quite the opposite, Mashuch bar Lasso. He did not engage in the bris milah. The bris was, as that famous Medrash says, the contrast or the explanation that Rabbi Akiva gave to Tunas Rufus, who asked if Hashem wanted people to be circumcised, why didn't he create them that way? And he said that Hashem expects us to process and develop ourselves. Just like we don't eat grain for breakfast, we eat bread and cereals. The grain is worked on, is processed in the hands of man. So too the human being is processed in his own hands, developed through the mitzvah of Bris Milah. We're here to work towards a final goal. That's the definition of maturity, of spirituality, of living for Olam Haba, of living a life of truth, of endurance of truth, to be able to work towards a goal, to be able to achieve that goal. Nothing valuable, nothing truly valuable is going to be achieved by us simply instantaneously. Yes, there's a concept of yesh kona olama b'shah achas, of gaining our world, so to speak, in an instant. In an instant, people did it at the last moment. They did something that reversed course and got them to the world. But the real world is yesh kona olamo, is the person who gains their world over a lifetime, over significant, dedicated, incremental work in order to be able to achieve a goal. Many stages, that work seems unrequited, unrewarded, doesn't get there immediately. But this is how we distinguish ourselves. A nation that has lived throughout millennia with the confidence that in the end, im kol zeh achakelo b'chol yom sheyavo, a nation that's patient, a nation that is dedicated to a final goal. That's the pedigree of Klal Yisrael. That's what we stand for, and that's a value for us to live in our lives. Stay the course, maturely working day after day in order to get there, in order to achieve the prize.